I would like to call to order the June 12th meeting of the Chaska Planning Commission. Liz, please take the roll.
Bovee?
Here.
Brass?
Here.
Cross?
Here.
Lacy?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
Pfeiffer? Seiler?
Here.
Urbanski? Here. And Chairperson Elke?
Here. Next, I'd like to get a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight.
So moved.
Commissioner Lacy
Second.
and Commissioner Brass. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Okay, now is the time in the, in our meeting for visitor presentations that are not on the agenda. So is there anything that's, anybody has that's not on the agenda for tonight? Seeing nothing, we will move. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. Please give us your name and address.
1547 Crest Drive, and we are here representing other neighbors in opposition of the Habitat for Humanity twin homes.
Yep, that's on the agenda.
So,
So that's on the agenda?
Yeah, that's on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, okay, very good.
All right, anyone else? Okay. All right, let's, next on the agenda would be approving last month's minutes from May 8th. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Saylor?
I'll second.
And Commissioner Urbanski. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is the consent agenda. We have the 6A, the sale of excess property in southwest Chaska is consistent with the comp plan for the city of Chaska and recommending approval of the final plot for the West Harvest Tradition development. Can I get a motion to
but I
approve
have
the consent?
a question beforehand, just because some neighbors complaining about getting water on their property. Was the purpose of the pool, I mean, the drain catch pool, going to solve the property?
This for
from-
6B? They have resolved that.
Must be.
Because it's actually kind of both. It has resolved?
Yes.
Then that's fine. I'll make a motion then.
Commissioner Cross and second by Commissioner Bowie. All in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. And that brings us to our action items. Item 7A is a public hearing tonight, and that's to recommend approval of a preliminary plat, site and building plan, and rezoning for the S lot and Ernst Home Redevelopment, Talle and Associates. Liz, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, so we have a preliminary site and building plan, a preliminary plat, and a rezoning request tonight for
Can
the,
you turn it up a little bit? I'm having a
Sorry.
little trouble.
so we have a preliminary site and building plan, a preliminary plat, and rezoning request tonight for the S lot and the Ernst home. So the site is here in downtown Chaska, denoted on this aerial exhibit with the two arrows. We have the Ernst home that's on the southernmost site at 211 Walnut Street is the current address. And then the vacant site to the north is the former Joseph S. lot, also known as 217 Walnut Street. So they are looking at a development on both of those parcels. So just to refresh you on the background, so the Ernst home was relocated back in 2014 to the location that it's in now. It was formerly in the Fireman's Park area. The Joseph S. home that used to sit on that vacant lot did burn down in 2014 and subsequently demolished in 2017 when we were not able to get any state funds to rehab it. So it's been sitting vacant for all these years. So the S lot and the Ernst home have been marketed together to have a redevelopment occur on both those lots, and we finally have someone who's interested and who has been going through the process with us to make those lots usable once again. So it was back in December of last year that we approved a concept plan for the S lot and the Ernst home. And they also did come forward to the HPC in April of this year and did obtain approvals from them as well. So tonight, we're looking at the second step in the planning process to get this project moving forward. So to reiterate, we're doing the pre-site and building plan, the preliminary plat, specifically to redevelop the S lot and restore the Ernst home. Specifically, they're requesting 7 rental apartment units within that project area, which will be composed of 3 different buildings. So one including the Ernst home, which will have 2 different or separate rental units within that, one on the first floor, one on the second floor. There will be a townhome building just located north of the Ernst home that'll have 3 dwelling units within that, and then a carriage home on the west side of the property or rear of the property encompassing 2 other dwelling units over interior parking garage. And they're also proposing a surface parking lot in the rear as well. In addition to the pre-site plan and pre-plat, they are asking for a rezoning to a zoning district that's more applicable to the project area, which will be a planned residential district, number 74 specifically. So here's kind of the current status of the area in more of a conceptual exhibit. So total, the site is about 0.4 acres in size. The site itself gains access from the alleyway on the west side of the property, which will provide access to the parking back there. Otherwise, the front of this site fronts on Walnut Street. And this is their most current site plan to date. So again, the Ernst home is on kind of the southernmost area of the site. The townhome building is just to the north of that, and then the carriage house is located to the rear of those buildings or on the west side. And then you'll have the surface parking lot basically separating that carriage house and the alleyway. They are proposing an access point kind of on that southernmost point of the site, which has changed from the concept which was shown at the north side of the site for them in terms of flow and gaining the most amount of parking and where the trash enclosure needs to be. They've indicated that this is their most logical point for an access point. We did make note that it is the most steep area of the alleyway where the access point is gaining access at this time. And as the Paseo concept kind of comes through fruition, it'll be kind of an important piece in terms of how these pieces interact in terms of grade. So we will need to see a turning radius exhibit in their final submittal just to ensure that the access point is adequate for people who may be coming from the south side, from the city parking lot, and being able to make that turn into and out of the parking lot there. So in terms of total stalls that they're providing back there, they are providing 2 stalls per dwelling unit with the exception of one of the units, which will only have 1 stall, 1 interior stall. Each unit will have their own garage stall and then plus 1 surface stall. So the only one that doesn't have an additional surface stall is the one of the units in the Ernst home, which only has 1 bedroom as opposed to 2. And they've stated that this layout would only be conducive to 1 occupant within that unit, so they don't foresee a need for that additional stall. So based on the parking that they're providing on site, we are comfortable with what they're proposing there. The other point I want to make, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, is that Paseo edge. So in our concept plan submittal, we wanted to make sure that they address this edge appropriately, as at some point in the future, we will be coming through kind of with a Paseo redesign of the alleyway to make it more pedestrian friendly and kind of a refuge from walking alongside Highway 41. So we wanted to make sure the edge that they provide to the site is addressing kind of that pedestrian area. So they're providing plantings as well as a decorative aluminum black fence to edge up along that side. We'll continue to work with the applicant on kind of the timing of that edge and the appropriateness of that edge, but we definitely feel like they've made a good start on kind of the overall design of that and addressing it towards the Paseo. So once we have kind of more firm plans in place with the Paseo, would we start to understand kind of how those two edges interact? This is more of a simplified plan, kind of showing the landscaping that they're proposing as well, and kind of the interior movement through the site. So the whole site will be connected by sidewalks that will connect out to Walnut Street and back into the surface parking lot and parking garage back there. So the continuity there is definitely achieved with what they're proposing. They're also providing a generous amount of plantings to kind of bolster up those edges where they can on this site. So this is the Ernst home. I've included the floor plans as well as the elevations. So the first floor, which has that one-bedroom unit, is proposed. And then the second floor has the two-bedroom unit, which will be accessed from an exterior staircase on the west side or rear of the property. So that's probably only the major change that you'll see on this building. It is a historic building, so the HPC has already reviewed kind of what maintenance they will be doing to the building. They'll have to replace some pieces and do some repointing, but all of those pieces are basically in line with kind of the originalness of the overall building. Then I've got the townhome floor plans on the screen here. So these will be 2 levels above grade plus a basement level, which I am not showing in this slide. So they'll have ample space within these units. And then the elevations of these. So the overall design of these, they were trying to basically mimic some of the qualities that you see in the Ernst home with the gabled roof line there, the front porches, and the application of brick on the first level, and then lap siding on the second level. So they are utilizing a brick blend that was actually used on the curling center, same blend and everything. So we are definitely supportive of that addition or application to the building, as we've successfully applied it before. So the brick and the lap siding was basically meant to be a balance in between all of the buildings. They wanted to make sure that the Ernst home was still kind of the focal point of the overall site, since it has the history and architecture there well before these new buildings. So they wanted to make sure there was a nice transition and balance between the new and the old. And this building definitely basically ties in all 3 buildings with the materials and overall design. And then the carriage house, which is on the west side, the first floor will basically encompass all of those parking garage stalls for each of the units. The end units will be the ones that are accessible to the dwelling units above. So the resident would be able to gain access from their parking stall or from the exterior, whatever direction they're coming in. And then we'll provide access to their single-level living on the top there. And then in terms of the design of this one, they'll be purely applying LP Smart Side siding to this building. So they're doing the lap siding on the second floor and then the board and batten on the first floor. So the lap siding will basically mimic what you see on the townhome building, and then the board and batten is basically an added element to really provide more depth to this building. I mean, if you were to apply all lap, it would start to get a little monotonous. So I think with the application of what they're doing out there, it definitely provides some articulation with the overall building. Plus they have some protruding elements as well to give more depth to this building. And then provide decorative garage doors as well to kind of bring that pop of color to the rear there. So again, they wanted to treat this building more as an ancillary structure to the site. So it's not something that's uncommon in downtown where you have the principal building and then each of them have detached accessory structures or garages in the rear. So they're trying to kind of mimic that type of site planning that you see within traditional downtown Chaska. And again, they kind of went with the whole white and lap siding approach on this one to, again, have it feel very ancillary to the other principal buildings on the site in the Ernst home. I've included a couple renderings as well to kind of give you more of a colorful interpretation of what it's going to look like out there. So they've included kind of an interior rendering between the buildings of people accessing the parking garages and the rears of the properties. So each property, each townhome building and the units in the Ernst home will have their own private yard space back there as well. The exception is the carriage homes that won't have their own space. Included some front views from Walnut Street, from the rear, from the alleyway, looking north from the public parking lot, and then more so looking northwest from Walnut Street, and then kind of more in an aerial view of the site. So in terms of scale and what you see from like the Walnut Street area, it definitely starts to fit into kind of that residential scale that you see in downtown Chaska. And downtown is unique where it does have kind of tighter footprints and so forth. So they're, again, trying to kind of carry that all the way through with this development. One of the requests tonight is for preliminary plat approval. So with the plat, they will need to shift their southern lot line a little bit more north so that it basically is outside of the city's public parking lot, and this is just kind of a logistical change that needs to happen with the plat. But another thing, they would like to condense this into one lot for the Ernst home and the other residential buildings to be one lot. So in conclusion, based on this preliminary submittal, we feel like they've done a great job trying to address the pieces that were brought up during the concept plan and some of the pieces that the HPC wanted to see as well. So at this stage, we are asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary site and building plan and preliminary plat for 7 apartment units on the S-Lot and Ernst home, subject to the conditions that are listed in your staff report. And then you'll also make a separate motion to recommend approval of the rezoning from the C3 district to the PRD 74 zoning district for both lots 1 and 2 of the Ernst home apartments. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the applicant is in the audience as well.
All right, thanks, Liz. Go ahead, Sue.
Where on the plans is the sign? Because I can't.
Hopefully I included
I
that.
have not seen it.
It is right here. So they put it up kind of towards the edge, but they do have to maintain a certain setback of 10 feet in order to have a freestanding sign out there. So it'd have to be a little bit closer to the buildings.
I just feel that, I realize these are rental units and most apartment buildings have some type of sign out. I just really dislike having a sign in front of one of our houses. So that's just my viewpoint.
It's only allowed up to 12 square feet, so if you think of kind of the dimensional requirements of that, it's not a very big sign. It's pretty conducive to kind of the scale and setting that it's going in.
So from concept plan, the entrance into the parking lot's changed from the north side to the south side.
Correct.
The lot slopes down from the north to the south.
Right.
What are the thoughts on the snow storage in the winter then?
So they've kind of denoted this area to be their main storage area, and hence one of the reasons why they've kind of flip-flopped the access points is to make additional room
Yeah.
for that snow storage.
And so there's proper drainage already to the south to take when that snow melts and continues down to the south?
I might have the applicant answer that question in terms of adequacy, but, when you think about this, obviously that's one big question is how that works.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Has the fire department reviewed this yet? And they're-
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, in every application, we have the fire department involved to let us know if there's any fire concerns or fire access points that need to be maintained, and we haven't heard of any from their standpoint, so.
And the HPC is fully behind this? They're-
Yep.
Yeah,
They
that's what I
definitely thought
was told.
from the concept to this point, they've made a lot of improvements in terms of the overall look of it. So they were very happy with what was proposed.
Any more questions for Liz? All right, if not, thank you.
All right.
This is a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing to any comments from the crowd. We'll start at 7:22. And if you want to comment on this project, please come up, give your name and address and comments. It looks like we have none, so we will close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, please come on up.
Hi, I'm Laura Russ. I'm the developer for the project. So I just wanted to say a word. Liz really covered everything, but these small infill projects are probably the hardest projects to do. So we are working really hard to try to land this, and the city's been very collaborative and working together. So we'll continue to refine it, especially this gap that always comes up in projects like this between the cost to build and what the eventual value will be, or at least the initial value. So we continue to work on that. But we feel really good about where the project is and are excited to do it. And I want to just have my architecture team address your snow question quickly. If one of you could just speak to the, This is Mark Burgess, he's with U+B, and if you could just speak to how we design that snow. And one other comment on why we flipped that axis around was actually at one of the previous meetings, the meat market representative was here, and he felt it would be helpful to keep that front part a little more clear because they have so much truck traffic in there. So that also was another reason that we did that. But as far as the snow, maybe you can
Yeah,
address
and
it.
just to pick up on that, they really wanted to consolidate the service entrance for the properties to the north and our trash enclosure, and felt like that was a better way to do it, to flip that. There is surface drainage that happens into that sort of rain garden snow storage area. Some of it's also taken up in a catch basin, which is located, I don't have a pointer,
You
but
can use the mouse.
I can use the mouse, okay. here we go, a catch basin, which is located right here, but some of the water comes this way, some of it gets caught in the catch basin. It's a pretty tricky site in terms of grading, because, you know, your highest point is over here on the north. We want to make sure that we're very respectful to the neighbors to the north in terms of, like, you know, digging down too deep, but we also want to be respectful to the Ernst house. And so it's a real fine balance in terms of grading to make sure that the drainage is working well, and to also make sure that we're not getting our townhomes too high compared to the Ernst house. Any other questions?
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your input. And anyone else? Okay, we will close the public hearing at 7:25 and bring it back to the commission for comment and input. And if we don't have any, we can then proceed to the motion.
No comment. I think it looks great. I'll
All
make a
right.
motion. Let me flip back to. Sorry. Motion to recommend to City Council approval of the preliminary site and building plan and preliminary plat for 7 apartment units on the S lot in Ernst home with the following 12 conditions.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Bowie. Can we get a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Seiler seconds. Any additional comment? All right, let's call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. So we need now to do a motion for rezoning as well from historical to PRD 74.
I can make that motion to recommend approval of rezoning of Lot 1, Block 1, Ernst's House Apartments, and Lot 2, Block 1, Ernst's Home Apartments to Planned Residential District, PRD 74.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Cross, second by Lacy. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good. Thank you very much.
Pass.
All right, next action item is to recommend approval of a conditional use permit amendment for Bavaria Downs. Liz, you are on once again.
Thank you once again. Ooh, forgot to change the title there. So Bavaria Downs is coming in for a conditional use permit amendment to add an additional gravel parking lot to their site and facility. So I've included an aerial with the topography as well to show exactly kind of the overall area that they're looking at for that additional gravel parking lot. So today, I should have showed a more zoomed out perspective, but today they have a gravel parking lot just to the west of where they're proposing it towards the barn buildings that are out there. And when we went through our original approvals, they did get 400 stalls within that gravel parking lot, and it was intended that that gravel parking lot would suffice for both the house venue and for the barn venues when they decided to rehab those. And then they would use valet services from that gravel parking lot to the house venue for people who are attending. So that was back in September of 2017 is when they got their first conditional use permit approved. And then it was November of 2017 is when they got their final site plans approved. So since that time, their facility has been in operation for almost a year. So they've definitely had some time to kind of digest the operations of the valet services that they use there. And they are facing or being faced with some logistical difficulties with that valet service. So it is the only service that provides valet for people attending the event. So again, everyone parks in that gravel parking lot closer to the barn venues, and then they get shuttled to the house venue. So they do run into the challenge that this valet service just can't service the entirety of the event, or the multitude of people that are leaving the event or coming in. So people are left waiting a little bit to get valeted back to their cars. And some attendees don't want to wait for that service, so they do decide to make that trek back to their cars, going down that long, narrow, and dark driveway that connects the venue to the gravel parking lot. So that's about a quarter of a mile long in terms of a walk, but some people choose to do it instead of waiting for that valet service. So the managers there definitely see a safety concern with these people walking down this driveway as the valet services are kind of going back and forth as well. So there's just no way to see them, and they definitely want to try to eliminate this safety concern overall. So with this proposal tonight, it would help alleviate that concern in its entirety. But also, one of their preferences is to really have two separate parking lots for both the venues that they have on that site. So a separate parking lot for the house venue, and then ultimately, when the barn venues come into commission, that they'll have their own separate parking lot. They feel that that'll be a much more smooth operation in the long term. So with that, they are asking for a conditional use permit amendment to their original CUP out there to allow for an additional gravel parking lot. So in any event that they start to expand, they do have to come in for that amendment. So that's what they're requesting tonight. So based on the site plan, you can see kind of how that gravel parking lot lays out in relation to the home. So it is accessed off of that driveway that provides access to the house venue. It'll provide kind of continuous flow into and out of that, totaling at 170 stalls. So they did base that number based on kind of full capacity of the venue, plus adding additional parking for employees and vendors that utilize that building. So they feel comfortable in the number that they're proposing there that would meet the needs of what the house venue is needing. So in terms of when they were selecting a location for this added parking lot, they wanted to make sure grade-wise it made sense. It was in the most open area that was feasible for them. Screening was going to be achieved, and that they were providing a convenient location for people walking from their cars to the venue. So the area that they've selected was the most logical placement for them in terms of meeting that criteria. There's other spots on the site that may be more open, but the grades are just not conducive to getting a parking lot out there, nor is it convenient for the attendees to walk maybe from the northeast side or the southeast side of the house without it being inconvenient for them and burdensome from those locations. So they landed on this location as being kind of the most optimal for what they're trying to do out there. The only comment that we have in relation to this added parking lot is making sure that the edge of this eastern side of the overall parking lot is screened adequately. Although they are separated by 1,000 feet or more from adjacent residences, it was noted during kind of the original CUP that some of the neighbors wanted to make sure that any view sheds into the site were kind of mitigated as much as possible. So we want to make sure that gets maintained with the addition of this parking lot by adding additional plantings along that eastern edge of the pond and parking lot. They've also included a tree survey just to give us an understanding of kind of the magnitude of what's being affected out there. So with the new parking lot, it will be impacting a total of 85 trees out there. And again, when we go through these kind of tree-covered areas, we want to make sure that maybe the most significant areas are being preserved, and really in this case, and the amount of preservation that they're already doing on site, this area didn't seem more significant compared to other areas. So really, we couldn't make that argument that this didn't seem like the most logical place because of certain trees involved in that area. So it's really no different compared to the other tree-groved areas. It does lend itself to be a little bit more open, as I've stated before, compared to some of the other tree-groved areas. So again, location-wise, it made sense for what they're trying to do out there. They've also included a lighting plan, just to give people an understanding that the lighting will be contained on-site and shouldn't be an issue for adjacent properties. Plus, with the added tree screening, it should be pretty well hidden within that tree grove. So with the CUP, there's a certain set of criteria that needs to be met. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm just going to go through a couple that are more applicable to the request tonight. So the first one being the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. So as we've stated before in the previous CUP, this area and where they have the house venue does lend itself to be quite separated from adjacent residences to the point where it's pretty difficult to see kind of the operations that are going on there. So that spacing does help kind of distance any potential issues the neighbors might have. The fact that they're kind of hiding it into the existing tree grove there will provide for a natural, already mature screening mechanism, which will also help with any potential issues from the neighbors. And then ultimately, the addition of this parking lot will help eliminate that safety concern for the property managers there and completely nix out the valet services altogether and allow people to have control over getting to a convenient parking lot without going down a dark and narrow driveway area. So that'll help with that. Secondly, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. So as we stated before, the spacing really does allow for it to feel completely disconnected from those other properties and has not posed any issues from what we've heard. And the location of where they're placing the parking lot, again, should also meet that criteria. And then lastly, the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. So again, this is still kind of redundant, but the location of the parking lot, again, was selected carefully so that the screening was in place, the impacts were as less as they could be, and the proximity to the venue was convenient for and safe for the attendees there. And then we've always encouraged a gravel over a bituminous parking lot in this venue area, given the rural character and context. So them kind of employing that out there is definitely a plus, and staff encouraged. So with that, we are asking you to make a motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit amendment to allow an additional gravel parking lot at 3919 Bavaria Road, subject to the conditions that are listed in your staff report. Happy to answer any questions, otherwise the applicant is also here. Yes, Susan?
Probably actually for the applicant.
Okay.
question I had, so when you said 85 trees will be affected, does that mean 85 trees are?
Will be removed.
Removed, okay.
Removed, yep.
Anyone else for Liz?
All right, I'll let the
Okay,
applicant.
Thank you, Liz, and if the applicant would come up and introduce yourself, I believe Commissioner Cross has a question.
Thank you, Chair Dalkey, Commissioners. I'm Ben Wickstrom. Need my address. 14525 Highway 7 in Minnetonka is my office address.
Thank you.
I've been working for Tim George, the owner, for, must be about 2.5 years ago we first met with Liz and Kevin, and saw the project through its initial construction and redevelopment. So, Commissioner Cross?
First of all, I'd like to say that I really want this to be a success. I really, really want this to be a success because that property was empty and deteriorating for a long time.
Yeah.
When I looked at the visions that we could see, I could see that the aerial was a long time ago. Really a long time ago. Yeah, and I was having a trouble relating where the things are to that. And so I tootled out there yesterday. And I saw things that kind of bothered me. One of them was where the drain field is. The drain field is in the woods, which I believe is not efficient. There is an area that the parking lot is going to be very close to the drain field, according to the spots that we see. The drain field is going to be enlarged with this pattern, with this development, in which I think is, well, be needed. Indeed, if you have 400 people, you need a little larger drain field than you have there. It just bothers me that there was no mention of the relationship here, because the trees coming down that are needed to come down, and I understand they need to come down, impact the drain field, and there are trees on the east side of the drain field that do not show in here, and they really should come down too. On the list of trees that you have saved and not saved and so forth, some of the saved trees are damaged. It just says right on there that I assume LN means leaning, maybe, okay? And then there are some that are just plain marked severely damaged. If you're having people walking in that area, there shouldn't be any damaged or leaning trees. It would, for the safety of people. Since I have had some experience with parking that don't have the stripes, people tend to park higgledy-piggledy. You know what I mean?
I do.
So in the times when I have had something to do with parking people, we've always had parkers. We had people directing them, so forth. Here's your spot, so forth. So it was usually 3 or 4 people, and there were usually just maybe 2 hours. They're not valets, but they get the parking lot utilized thoroughly, which won't happen if people are parking themselves. So my concern actually is, and people won't believe this, that I think a few more trees need to come down.
Yeah.
And you should make sure you're using a lumberman, because you've got beautiful oaks.
Right.
And the wood should be used. and not waste it. Mr. Nakashima would be upset horribly if it ended up being firewood. And then there was a comment under the lighting for bollards. And I couldn't tell where they were.
They're up near the house.
They're near the house.
Yes, they are.
Do we
Those
have,
were put in as a part of the initial lighting.
Oh,
So that it's probably just re-referenced.
Yeah,
here.
it
But
was.
the bollards are basically lining up adjacent to the front of the home.
okay. So that's my concerns, is that the drain field has to be looked at extremely carefully, and some of those trees should not be
right.
in that drain field if you want it to work right. And since I was out there, I was disappointed to see that the climate-controlled tent-like structure for dinner and entertainment was not really a tent-like structure, but it looks very usable. And I'm glad the pool is gone. The pool is still shown on there, but I'm glad it's gone. And I want this thing to work. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Cross. Liz, you'll record all these comments for us, please. A few things. I think the tree survey shows what are assigned as significant trees or whatever the characterization is in your municipality, or whatever it was at the time of the tree survey. So there are certainly more smaller or underbrush or things like that that will be cleared. And I believe in the walking area, there just won't be room to leave anything. So I think the danger part won't come into effect, but we'll take that under advisement. The location of the drain field or storm filtration pond, you're right, it's an expansion, and it is an area that is thinner with trees than others. I don't know if you suggest that we move it out into that field and have it a little further from there, but we can certainly ask Mr. Campion, our engineer, to see if there's a different shape or a different location. Probably still, while expansion is the best route, if it can take a different shape to get in a little better location, but I can't promise that. I haven't, not being an engineer. But that's certainly a good comment. Couple of other things. The tent structure, just as an aside, we tried for a tent-like structure, but it was a building code requirement and things, and it became a permanent structure, and it's gorgeous if you've been in there. It's terrific. And what was the last? What was the other?
It was the bollards.
I
bollards.
didn't know where they were, but they were in the papers that,
Right.
on the pages that we got.
Yeah, those are specs of the overall site. I don't know if he plans to add any more as decorative along the walkway or what there is room for. Liz's comment about additional landscaping on the east side of that pond, certainly happy to do that. We can submit a plan to you before the city council meeting if you need to see that. There was one other concern you have, and now I'm drawing a blank. Does anybody?
The parking stripes.
Parking stripes, thank you.
Straight.
This is a 170 lot, or 170 stall lot, and I think if you look at our limited historical data, there are a few weddings that limit out the capacity on that venue, but I'm sure Mr. George, on those ones that he believes are, not only would he have someone directing parking to maximize it, but probably also, I think he mentioned in his notes to me for the narrative that valet might also be utilized in those cases where we're right up against the limit. But I would assume most weddings are gonna have 50 to 75% of this lot to capacity, of capacity, but the ones that are more full, I think we're aware. And it's happened in the other lot, not for maybe one of the weddings, because there are 300 of the 400 built out there, but for the grand opening and things like that, they certainly had to direct people, so your concern is noted, thank you.
So on the parking lot,
Yes.
are the structures that look like they'd be concrete on the edges of, that encompass the parking? There's the oval type,
Oh, the islands.
the islands, yes, please, thank you. Obviously, the
Those-
stripes aren't there. Would the islands be there? Because if the islands are there, then that
Right.
kind of defines the parking area. You could easily utilize a few cones to kind of go down the middle, and people would
Right.
get the idea pretty quick.
Yeah, Commissioner Brass, thank you. I didn't drive into that existing lot to see if it was just landscaped or if it was a curb or something like that.
Even if
But-
it's just landscaped, because I clearly
Yeah.
see you having a concrete sidewalk,
Yeah,
so we'll be doing some concrete work out there.
yes.
But, I'm in favor of the gravel. I mean, I think that works in the woods area and for the
Right.
absorption of water.
Right. I know
So-
in the existing parking lot near the barn venue, there are ropes to kind of show
Perfect.
where the
Yep.
line, where the separation should be.
Yep.
As far as side to side, that's where it gets a little tricky, but, you're right. If there's some kind of end and beginning, that'll help.
To clarify, I think Commissioner Cross said for utilization of the drain field, you might actually want to clear some of the trees. Is that correct? Clear more of those trees in there? I just wanted to hear you say it again.
It has so many different names now. I interpret this as a drain field, but then someone said it's a pool, and then someplace it's, anyway. What is the important part is to have it function, and usually drain fields within woods do not function well. And so my main concern was that indeed, whatever we're redoing here, that has to work. And if indeed we're going to require some trees coming down to screen a little bit on the east side of that, they have to be far enough away so this field works.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with that.
Thank you, commissioners. Any other questions?
Anything else?
Just curious, when is the barn structure going to open?
Thank you, Commissioner Bowe. Mr. George had intended, I believe, to start construction on that this year, to have weddings next year. I don't know if that's still under consideration with this being another project and the cost. It might be a start next spring and open the following year. So,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
thank you.
And, excuse me, this is also a public hearing, so we will open it up to anyone that wants to comment on this. We'll open the public hearing at 7:53. Not seeing anybody running to the microphone, we will close it at 7:53:30. And bring it back to the Planning Commission for any additional comments before we move on to a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit amendment for Bavaria Downs, number 2019-12,
With the
with the recommended,
10, perfect,
10, gotta pull it back up, conditions.
10 conditions.
I'll second it.
All right. Motion by Commissioner Brass, second by Bowie. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good, thank you very much, sir. And we will now move on to action item 7C, on the agenda, which is to recommend approval of the concept plan for the Shepherd of the Hill Twin Home Development Habitat for Humanity, PC number 29-14. And Liz is back.
All right, thank you, Planning Commission. Last item on the agenda tonight is for a concept plan for the Shepherd of the Hill Church, is proposing twin homes on their property. So the area of that site is highlighted in blue for the full extent of Shepherd of the Hill Church. The area that we're looking at tonight is basically the area that's underutilized on their site today, which is in the southeast corner of the site as it abuts Crest Drive. So this site is bound on the north by Engler Boulevard. You have Highway 41 on the west side there, and then Crest Drive on the east side. So you'll definitely see this site, or more so the church site, as you get to that intersection of Highway 41 and Engler Boulevard. So Habitat for Humanity is the applicant tonight. They are a national nonprofit organization that has a mission to provide everyone a decent place to live. They have done work in Chaska before, predominantly in our Clover Ridge development. They've built a couple homes within that area, and they've expressed their interest in developing this underutilized piece of the church's property for a little bit now. So they did, in between kind of the time of being interested in coming forward tonight, they did have a neighborhood meeting on February 26th of this year to basically present their proposal and project for what they're proposing tonight. They did mention that there was one concern raised regarding the overall drainage, so that'll be something that we'll obviously want them to take a look at as they proceed down this process. So the concept plan approval is for the construction of 4 twin homes, which would total at 8 dwelling units. So in terms of the comprehensive plan and the zoning out there, they are meeting what's been guided for this site. In the R1 zoning district, they do have to obtain a conditional use permit in order to have a duplex use, however. This is an existing condition survey. It obviously doesn't show all the landscaping that's been installed on the south side, but it does give you an understanding of kind of the grades that are happening on that southeast side. So the highest point is, you know, as you're sloping down towards the south, so highest point is kind of more so towards the north side of the site, and then it starts to slope down as you get to the southeast there. So this is the proposed layout and site plan that they have for this site. So the site they're looking at is approximately 2 acres in size, which would include even the public right-of-way. So the 4 twin homes are basically oriented around this cul-de-sac that's accessed off of Crest Drive. All of the driveways will basically have access on that cul-de-sac point. And again, there will be a total of 8 units proposed on this cul-de-sac. They have identified areas for potential stormwater ponding kind of on the north and south sides of the access point into the development, as well as on the south side, excuse me, to collect stormwater runoff. So they are proposing a couple different layouts out here, and again, it has everything to do with the grades. So they will have a 2-story above grade unit shown at the top here. This will be a slab on grade unit that'll be proposed on the north side of the site to kind of, again, match in with those grades that are proposed there. So that'll be slab on grade, 2 stories above grade. There will be no basement, or traditionally what we know as a basement for these units. And then the second unit, which is on the south side, will be 1 story above grade, but will have traditional basements excavated into the ground. So they're both essentially the same layout in terms of the units. They're just a little bit different in terms of their orientation and heights. They have also included a couple renderings to kind of give you a little bit of an understanding of how they fit in to the overall area. So the first one is looking west from Crest Drive. So as you can see, the 2-story units are proposed on the north side there, and then those 1-story above grade units are proposed on the south side. They've also included a couple other perspectives looking south and then looking northwest looking south, and this is looking northwest from Crest Drive. So given kind of the scale of this development, they do have a couple pieces to work on as they come back for preliminary. I think drainage being kind of the first and foremost, since it was recognized as a concern from some of the neighbors in the stormwater ponding. So they'll have to show how they meet the county and city regulations for that aspect. But at this concept level, we just don't have that information at this point. And then they will also have to come in at that preliminary level and obtain a conditional use permit to operate the duplex use. So in terms of meeting the minimum requirements for that, they have shown that they can meet those requirements. So we don't see an issue with that being obtained just based on the regulations that they have to meet for that. But again, they'll have to go through that process as they come back for preliminary. So at this stage with the concept level, they did do a pretty good job of kind of looking at the overall context and what they're proposing out there. So we are asking you to make a motion tonight to recommend approval of the concept plan for the Shepherd of the Hill twin homes based on the conditions that are listed in your staff report. Happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, the applicant is here as well.
So I think in the materials it mentioned that the entrance to the church that's currently off Angler may change in the future to be off Crest to the east.
Yeah, it could be with.
Does that impact any thoughts on this? Or is the city okay with 2 entrances?
Well, that's going to be dictated by the county
Okay.
more so. They have improvement plans for Angler Boulevard, which more than likely is going to make them eliminate that access on Angler Boulevard that the church currently has. So we, of course, want to make sure that there is still allowance for, if need be, they can access the church's parking lot off of Crest Drive.
Hey Liz, and to clarify, the county improvement project, that we widen that area, widen the road there?
It may slightly. It's hard to say. They're going through the studies right now, but kind of the initial analysis that was done when we were looking at 41 kind of went to either side of Angler, and there was a concern raised at that time, and so we wanted to make sure and be proactive to make sure that the church could still stay there.
Yeah.
I mean, that they had an access. And so through this process, if they're selling something off, we want to make sure that at least that's accounted for. The county is going through a study right now on Angler Boulevard, really basically from Laconia to the Y in Chaska. And that'll look at that in detail, and so we don't have the answers for that yet. But given that there was an indication from MnDOT when they were looking at 41 that proximity to 41 was a problem, we wanted to make sure that that was addressed in this, and that something, wasn't sold off, that you didn't put another house up in that location that would preclude the driveway from being turned if needed. But at this point, that's not determined, but it's a prudent course of action from our perspective to make sure that in the future, if something needs to happen, there's a way for it to be accommodated.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Questions for Liz? Well, I have a question. So, being that Habitat for Humanity is building and are these still gonna be market rate when they go up for sale? You know, obviously built to hit a certain.
Right. I think their intention is to still market that at a fair market rate. I can't speak too much to that. I don't know how defined that is right now for the applicant. They may have an update on that now, but
They're new units for sale,
yes.
they're not rental, so they're not like a subsidized
No.
units
No, they're going to be for sale.
for sale. And so, just trying to understand the project and the motivation behind it. Is the church donating the land to make the sale price lower to attract affordable housing? Is that kind of the idea, or?
I'll probably have the applicant discuss more of the background as to,
Yeah, just like to understand.
right,
The development idea, the process, and
Right.
what's the motivation.
any other questions? Otherwise, I think this would be a good time to invite them up and have them answer those questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Good evening.
Good evening, Chair Dalkey and Commission. My name is Chad Dipman, and I am Land Acquisition Project Manager for Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. Thanks for having us here today, or me, I guess. Our first connection with Shepherd of the Hill Church was at I believe a grouping of churches who are working together to address the housing need that exists in Carver County, where one of my colleagues, the faith constituent manager, presented about Habitat. Pastor Dean at Shepherd of the Hill followed up with her about this idea of developing the portion of their property that they are tired of mowing. So we started talking about that idea and what could happen. They explored a few other ideas with some other nonprofit affordable housing developers, looking at larger buildings, multifamily buildings, and arrived at the conclusion that our smaller scale type of development would be most appropriate there and most feasible, probably. So we started massaging site plans. We've probably been going on a year and a half, maybe 2 years now that we've been talking to them about it. And wanted to not endeavor to change the zoning or, and then to just comply with the existing zoning requirements whilst maximizing the number of units that we could fit on site. They have discounted the property for us. It's not an outright donation. We are paying for that. We are also partnering with the Carver County Community Development Agency Land Trust. The current stage of that partnership is an application to Minnesota Housing for housing infrastructure bond funds and impact fund funds. And if we get those, we'll continue that partnership, and these units would go into the land trust, all 8 of them. We do sell the properties at fair market value. We appraise them, and that is the purchase price. They are subsidized. The land trust component of that is a portion of the subsidy. Habitat itself subsidizes them through our private philanthropic monies that we bring to the table. We'll also have probably some Federal Home Loan Bank money in there to subsidize them. We serve families in the 30 to 80% of area median income range. So for a family of 4, that is about $28,000 to $52,000. But that scale moves as family size changes.
So does Habitat act as like the financier essentially in helping someone purchase that home in the approval?
Yeah, we're kind of a full service developer, builder, lender, realtor. We don't actually for the most part, We don't actually put the houses on the market.
Yeah.
We market them to our program participants.
Right.
However, in a partnership with the Land Trust, which is a new endeavor for us, we anticipate joint marketing efforts. They have a pool of interested parties. And so we'll kind of probably try to draw applicants from both of our programs to apply and then get matched to and sold these houses.
Are they only available to your participants?
Correct. Of course, anyone can apply to our program, and we encourage that, and we will do marketing for the program out here. But we don't just take unsolicited offers from non-program
So the
participants.
idea is to
buy
help
the
someone in your
houses.
program, single parents, stuff like that, people that need more affordable housing.
Yeah.
Need help.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on top of that, we're also a fairly short-term lender where we provide the first mortgage loan. We turn around and sell that to Bremer
Right.
pretty soon, but we're providing the first mortgages as
Yeah,
well.
you originated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the homeowners also help with the kind of a sweat equity type program.
There is a sweat equity component. That right now is comprised of the application and training process, which is just really long and takes a lot of effort on their part, and then 100 hours on site.
Do you have a approximate value of the units yet, or did I miss
Yes,
that?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
we
Okay.
think 275, construction is a ways out.
Yeah.
The market can change. But
Side, correct.
each side, correct. Yeah.
All right, very good.
A question.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Cross.
Have you done twin homes before?
Yes, ma'am, we have. I don't know the exact number, but in a variety of areas, we've built twin homes before.
Now, I feel like the grouch, but here's my hat.
It's a
I
lovely one.
have worked various places, and I have worked with various potential owners, and the variety is very great, and I understand they put the sweat equity in, and they are usually workers. But sometimes in the family, they have one worker bee that is just busting their butts, and maybe some other people in the family really don't quite care as much and will not have pride in ownership. I worked on the houses out in Clover Ridge. And the difference between one household and the other household is very great. And my one criticism, and why I haven't done any this year or last fall, was that even though there's a mortgage and someone else is switched over to the mortgage and so forth, I think there should be some follow-up by Habitat on wondering if there needs to be a little bit more education for the whole family. Because when you see screens on the roof and the window wide open and so forth, you just know there is not pride in ownership there. And that was the house I worked on. I was kind of really depressed. And also, the house that I worked on, again, if you've got a pretty house and it's done nice and so forth, you have a little bit of a pride. But the house I was worked on had a group worked on it earlier, and they laid the linoleum or whatever, the vinyl on the bathroom floor without vacuuming and sweeping up all the construction ditters, So it was the workers who were not putting the value into the house how can the people who move into the house can keep the same value? I love Habitat, and I have done this for years, but I'm getting a little creaky, and they only want me to do painting now, which is not very fun. But my concern with the twin homes is conflict between the two parties, and how that if indeed one group has pride of ownership and the other ones don't. How, or is there any provision with Habitat to do a little bit of conflict resolution?
Well, so from the get-go, there's a shared wall agreement that governs the maintenance and repair of the exteriors of the units. So that's what we start with, and with that comes education on what that means, that they are in partnership with each other to maintain and take care of that house.
Is there an association then?
There is not an association proposed here.
Okay, it's a shared wall agreement?
Correct.
Between the two people?
Between each two units, yeah.
Who enforces it?
The owners, which is true of a homeowners association.
Yeah.
It is the homeowners who enforce their association.
That way, when you have like a roof issue. and
Well,
you have-
right, I understand, I can
Become expensive.
understand what you're saying. If it's just one, it's like, hey, I don't think you're doing good, and he's like, hey, you know what, sorry. And just got two people, so if there's like an oversight or a governor, and some sort of governance of that 8 homes, maybe there could be provision where someone from Habitat could step in and render a decision, some sort of oversight, if there
Have
were
you
to be.
done this type of grouping of twin homes before? Not just standalone twin homes, but this type of cluster?
We have, not exactly the same, but yes, we've had groups of twin homes as well as single families intermixed.
Because this is like a development. It's, you have a lot of common shared interests, even between twin home 1, twin home 2, 3, and 4, because they're all clustered, you know, sharing the same access.
Yeah, well, so they are sharing the same public access. The cul-de-sac will be a public road.
Okay.
There's actually no common area proposed, and there's no statutory requirement for a homeowners association or a planned unit plat. And we are trying to avoid that. We have found that small associations don't function any better, really, than twin home owners. It's still a small group of people. And the association, having an association then triggers a management company, which is an extra cost. So it's our belief that a group of twin homes with the individual 2-unit owners working together is going to be as successful as an association. That doesn't mean we don't need to do our job in educating all of them about what that means and providing. I hesitate to say that we would do anything to provide oversight. Once we sell the houses, they are fee simple, and we are the lender for a month, and then we are not the lender, and we are not their landlord. We are there, however, as always, to provide assistance. And we do get calls from twin homes on how help to resolve those questions, and we're happy to take those calls. Also, the other layer of this is the land trust. So the property will be owned by the land trust. They will be members of the land trust, and the land trust will have its involvement as it does with its other units. They will actually probably, after we sell the mortgages, will have a closer relationship to the families than we do. But they're not here, I can't speak for them.
So there is an educational, you said there's quite a bit of education, then 100 hours of on-site work or sweat equity.
Yeah.
And part of that is, I assume a lot of these people are first-time homeowners
All of them.
and what that means.
Right. Yep, it's all about their first-time home buyers, and many of them are immigrants to this country, so they haven't grown up in American-style housing. So it's all about how are the houses put together? What do you need to do to maintain them? What does it mean to maintain your yard?
Well, also what it means to be a neighbor.
Yep, exactly.
Because
And
it's
we
not
have,
just- It's not just the 4 units here, it's the other people on Crest Drive, it's the people to the east of there and to the south, and even the school to the north,
The church.
and the church, yeah.
yep,
I would
One of
assume
our
that Shepherd Hill
classes-
has a big stake in this.
they do, yeah. So coincidentally, one of our classes is called Being a Good Neighbor. So that's part of the education program. And Shepherd of the Hill is a proponent of affordable housing. They want this, and we anticipate them being involved, at least from a neighborhood support perspective.
Well, they might get 8 more families in their congregation, maybe.
There you go.
Couple questions. Is there a component to Habitat for Humanity on the education side? Is there education after the closing? So 6 months after they're in the property, they're required to do something, or there's a review process or something, or 1 year, a maintenance class type thing, a 5-year maintenance class?
Right. Not a requirement, but an opportunity. We have ongoing family training sessions. We have annual family get-togethers where we have kind of information presentation or booths and whatnot for them. But again, we're not the landlord. Fee simple, but for the land trust. And we're there to help, but we're not there to impose our will.
And how is the selection process done, and how does it relate to, I understand the fair housing laws, but I guess I'm a little bit, is there a layer, are you able to select whoever you like because you're through a Habitat organization, or does the fair housing laws still apply? How does that work?
Sure. So happy to answer the question. I want to also just point out for the record that this is the Planning Commission that's reviewing the zoning and site plan, and we have entered into other territory that is perhaps not relevant to that purview, but I'm happy to answer your question. So since we are a lender and we are now a regulated lender, actually. In the past, it's a long story. In the past, we were a less regulated lender. Now we are a more fully regulated lender, and so we have to adhere to the fair housing rules. I guess, does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand selection process,
Yeah.
like who the neighbors are. We got neighbors to the one side, just want to understand.
So and so the way that kind of the marketing and
It can be anybody, if it can be a mom with 2 kids, it can be an immigrant, it can be, it's not just going to be all one, you're not going to just pick, I'm going to pick these people.
No, right. So the way that we try to step away and not select the families select the houses. So the way we market the houses to our participant pool, we call it the pool, and the pool is comprised of families that are mortgage ready. So people enter our program at various stages in the home buying process or mortgage readiness process. And so if they are not immediately ready, we work with them to get there. And that may be credit correction, it may be how much of your other loans do you need to get paid off before you can take on a mortgage, all kinds of stuff that an underwriter is going to look at to decide whether or not they're mortgage ready. Once they're mortgage ready, they go into our pool and they start receiving property letters, which is kind of our advertising for the properties that we have basically starting construction in the next month or so. Those letters go out to everyone in the pool who is eligible to buy those properties. So the families have to be able to afford 50% of the fair market value in the first mortgage. So if they are on the lower income end of the spectrum, there's a possibility that they can't afford the 135 or whatever it would be for these houses at 275. So there may be some families who don't see these houses, but if they're over that income, and these are 4-bedroom units, so basically everyone that's over that income level will see these houses regardless of family size. They then express interest to us on whether or not they want to buy any of the houses on the property.
They want to be in that area, they like the house. Got it. Well, I appreciate that. It just helps me understand how it works. I think it's a great program. I just didn't understand how that works. I have a real mundane comment.
Sure.
I think. Looking at the renderings, and I don't want to change the concept, the ranch style, which is a single level, and it looks very flat. You got one window off to the side, and it's all garage, basically. Just a little architectural critique would be if you could put windows, like, you know, little windows in the garages, just to bring the look of more windows on the front. Sure. Otherwise, it looks like a solid garage house and like one little window over here and a front door. So you kind of lose the house feeling. It looks like a big garage. So just something.
Take that in
consideration for like the neighbors. It looks a little more.
Yeah, I hear you.
Nice.
I'll go off of that. The back of the homes are 84 feet long, and they're just one flat wall back there. So something like a 4-sided architecture where you'd have a couple bump outs or something to just break up that space to visually make them a little bit more appealing that way.
Right.
And that is the type of thing we'll look for.
Yeah, that, I understand.
Preliminary stage.
Yeah, it's just this concept of just kind of throwing out some.
I guess I have a question and or concern about just the grouping of the houses and the size of the cul-de-sac, and it seems like there's only one spot for excess parking outside of the driveways, and just wondering what kind of issues and or concerns that may be from, you know, just I'll say the overflow side of things, because really you've got the one spot between the two houses on the end of the cul-de-sac, and then you have the driveway in. So just wondering how that would be addressed, or is that a concern?
I think they're going to pull it up for us.
Yeah.
The site layout, or I can do that. Haha, got the power. There we go. So there are 2-car garages. This is a 30-foot setback to the garage door from the lot line. And then I think this is 10 or 12 feet, I forget. So with the 30-foot driveway that can accommodate 2 cars across, you can, of course, get 2 cars there, if not more. So each house has 4 parking stalls. And then there is parking allowed all along this side of Crest Drive. And then I'm actually not sure about this portion of the cul-de-sac, if that's wide enough to accommodate parking. That's something I don't know.
So you were asking, like, let's say a 10-year-old has a birthday party and 6 cars show up, or do you park not hindering the neighbors kind of deal?
Basically, yeah.
Well, I guess if parking is allowed on a street, I don't consider it a hindrance to
Crest.
the neighborhood.
Right, and that was not necessarily knowing if there's parking allowed
It's
on
allowed.
Crest and what kind of
Yes. Sorry, it's a sensitive mouse.
concerns it has there.
Applicant? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
This isn't a public hearing, but we still invite any comments from the crowd. Come up, give you your name and address, please.
Ryan Higgelstrom, 1498 Crest Drive. So this presentation's pretty sweet. So I was the one who brought up drainage. Oops. So there's all the information that is perfect. This guy again. Oops. So touchy. Okay, so 1498 Crest Drive, where I live, is right here. And all the water from this so this whole area here from, I think there's a storm drain up here, and then there's a storm drain down over here. So all this property drains to the storm drain right there. So I estimate that's about 5 acres. So what happens is this whole property drains, let me see this one. So as you can see, this whole thing drains, I think it's a little bit higher over here, but it drains right down through here, which comes right through my backyard and 1480 Scenic View. And it does that when it has heavy rains, especially in the wintertime, because what happens is this snow dam's all up along here, and then it snow dams along Scenic View. And so the snow dam gets very large, and then it all backs up in my backyard, and we get what we call Lake Hagelstrom every year. So according to this picture, which they didn't have the rain ponds in before, but this water is still going to drain from here, here, and it's going to come right down through here, because this is where it always comes, right by this tree here. So that would be the major concern that I have. And if I could, I have a picture from this spring of what I'm talking about. So I have to carve a channel on Scenic View to allow that to drain, and a lot of times it'll freeze up. But this is what I'm talking about. And all drains right through there. And this year it actually came in my basement, because if I don't cut that channel, it'll drain through my property.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be the concern that I have.
And so Liz, is that what you were talking about earlier? Is there going to be like a drain tile type of scenario, or
Thank you.
how, that's a lot of water.
Yeah, and at this point, at the concept level, we don't have the details on how the drainage is going to be
Yep.
treated. That's when we start to get into those details during the preliminary process, so
Yep.
they'll have to provide a grading plan, a stormwater
Drainage
plan.
plan and
yeah.
Number 7.
It's a condition,
Number
right?
7 is one of the, is a stormwater management plan.
Right.
So you might actually get a resolution from this. I mean, if no development, nothing changes. With development, it'll have to be addressed. So it actually will, your outcome could be positive.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Dwight Hemme. I'm at 1547 Crest Drive. I'm just to the southeast corner of that planned development. Our concern is we moved here 19 years ago, and we bought property on Crest Drive and in Chaska to be single-family residential homes. And this substantially changes that. I know that it meets the R1 zoning, but the conditional use for duplexes, I think it's going to substantially change the dynamics of the neighborhood, and that's not why we bought the house on Crest Drive that we did. We're concerned with a lot of the things that Commissioner Cross is that depending on the clientele that buy those houses, maybe we get lucky and we have eight people that love their houses and take care of them and have the extra funds to maintain them over time. And in that case, we would welcome them. But I'm afraid that just with the law of averages, we're going to have some unpleasant experiences. And we would prefer to have single-family residential homes built in that neighborhood. That's consistent with that neighborhood that's well-established. We don't believe twin homes. We like Habitat for Humanity, and we support that, their mission there, but in this neighborhood, single-family residential homes is what we believe is the best use of that property. Oh, yeah, the other thing is like you said, the buildings are wide, and you wanted architectural things in the garage, Commissioner Brass. We're going to be looking at the rear elevations of all these houses, and rather than a front landscaped residential house across from our house. So we take pride in our ownership and keep our house up, and we're just concerned that we might not have that if we have these come in the neighborhood. And I'm speaking, there's a lot of other people that had in our neighborhood that are have plans, and they're not here, but I don't know of anybody that's in favor of this in our neighborhood. There's 8 families there, and the adjacent properties are 8 residential properties, so that's a pretty significant change for 8 single-family residential homes, is to have 8 families come in like that. So.
And Liz, do you know, do you know what the comp plan guides this parcel for?
It guides it for residential.
The same, stays the same?
Yep.
Yeah, there's no rezoning needed.
No, I just, yeah, okay, I was just curious if it was gonna be an even higher density or
No.
a retail
Low
zone, a
density
complex, since
residential.
it's a hard corner on 41.
Correct, for the
Right.
duplex use, they do
Yep.
need a CUP for that. Yep.
Anyone else?
Yeah, my name is Dan Johnson, and I live at 1512 in between Engelstrom's and the church. And yeah, there's just, twin homes are not common in the immediate neighborhood, I would say. It's probably about a mile or 2 away before you see twin homes. So yeah, it's mostly single families.
Good, I believe that's not quite everyone. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Audrey Hemme. I'm Dwight's wife at 1547 Crest Drive. Some of my concerns with the building, bringing in the duplexes, is the number of children that it's going to also bring into the neighborhood. I believe at the informational meeting in February, there is a requirement, you can correct me, Jeff, if I'm wrong, there has to be a certain number of children per unit and a certain number of total people, that it can't just be one couple, it's got to be a certain number of habitants, is that correct?
So there's not a requirement for a particular number of children. There would be a limit to such that we wouldn't match more than 2 people per bedroom. That's 8 people, so that's a big family, no doubt. There's not a hard limit on the lower end. It's just that a smaller family, in particular a 2-person adult household, is less likely to qualify for the houses. Does that make?
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. So with that, with the number of possible children that could be coming into the neighborhood, my fear as a parent is that Crest Drive is going to become a playground for bikes and skateboards. There is a slope to Crest Drive. We have seen some of the, neighborhood kids that have used it already as a skateboard park and a bicycle park. Now, if you start getting excess cars parking both directions on Crest Drive, and it becomes the skate park, the bicycle park, and with the speed that some of these cars are coming from the south further down Crest Drive and not stopping at the required stop sign that's up there already, my fear is we're going to hear something happen someday with just the number of possible people and kids moving into the neighborhood and the overflow of cars. If there happens to be several adults in one of the units that all have a car to go to work or whatever, it's going to bring in a lot of commotion and a lot of cars. So I personally, too, would like, again, a supporter of Habitat for Humanity. Could it possibly stay zoned the way it is, single-family dwelling residential, and just sell off a few lots along Crest Drive and not bring in the 8, but maybe bring in 3 or 4 single-family dwelling units? So I would hope that you would consider the neighbors in the neighborhood and our concerns there that we have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one more comment too, is piggyback on what my wife was saying too. If we have large groups of children, the children are, children are fine. They'll be, they like to play, but then when they become teenagers, and now if everybody or every other one has a car to get to work, now we've got all these cars and congestions in the cul-de-sac just from the people, the large families that potentially could be living there. So that's just our concern, that it's going to become overcrowded and too many families in a small area.
Thank you.
Liz, can you comment on, I'm looking at a map of the neighborhood, there's no sidewalks on either side of
Correct.
Crest Drive?
There's no sidewalks.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're definitely back for comment. I think everyone's commented, so.
Well, certainly I'll be interested to see the drainage plan from the engineers come back when they come back for preliminary. I'd be interested to maybe see a traffic study.
Yeah, I would definitely want to see a traffic study as well.
But, some of the other concerns, I think, are true in any development. I mean, we're all concerned about homeowners that take care of their properties.
Yep.
I don't know that that is,
That is exclusive.
yeah, right.
Liz, would a traffic study be, it's not listed as one of the conditions, but is that an automatic? Sorry.
Is it an automatic what?
Is it an automatic part of the process here?
Not unless you request one.
Okay. Whoever makes a motion, I think we should add that as well.
This question is really, has Habitat looked at a different version for this property? Or is it only this type cul-de-sac and so forth?
Yeah, has there been a concept for single family?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so we looked at a variety of site plans. We looked at just lots facing onto Crest Drive. The church guided us away from that because they want more of their property to go towards the housing development. They want to eliminate maintenance. So lots just along Crest Drive would kind of be inordinately deep in order to accommodate that desire from them. So that's why we're trying to make the use of as much of their property as possible. That means going into the property, which kind of necessitates then access into it, and that kind of inherently needs a cul-de-sac. So that's kind of the decision-making process that drove the overall shape of the project. Yeah, like I said, like much everyone, I think, will try to maximize the units doing that under the existing zoning code requirements. Yes, we need a conditional use permit, but we don't need any other zoning accommodation. As far as, whether or not this is overly dense, according to your zoning code, it's not. These are, from our perspective, quite large lots. We've built far more densely, including in Chaska, in Cloverfield. There is the park and the community center just to the north of this property, so we anticipate kids going up there to play even when they are tired of their large backyards. And the church has, of course, said they can come play on our side of the line too. So, yeah, streets are attractive. I get it. I played in the street too. But I think it's also an established fact that parked cars on streets slow traffic. And I know that not everyone may agree with that, but to the extent that cars do park on Crest Drive, I think traffic will get slowed. We haven't done a traffic study. I did include an exhibit in our presentation. I don't know if I can access it right now, but
Not via this.
not via that. Okay. But if you kind of zoom out from here and take a look at the, if I go to here, I guess. My traffic study, I'm not a traffic engineer, is that the residents of these houses will exit onto Crest Drive and turn north and go to Engler and then go about their business. Going south on Crest Drive involves a pretty long trip on a residential street down to Crosstown. And so we just don't anticipate that happening very much, even if they're headed downtown. I could be wrong about that, but
Maybe it's less of a traffic study and more of there's no great path for the families that live there that will clearly walk up Crest Drive and cross Engler to go to school in many cases, or to the community center, so.
well, they will have to do the same thing that all other neighbors have to do.
Yeah.
Yes, they're already doing it.
Yeah.
You have to go up to the microphone, otherwise they can't hear you.
The kids from our neighborhoods, they live too close to the schools, so they get bused to, we go to Carver Elementary, Pioneer Ridge. So none of the kids there actually go to the schools that are right across the street.
Of course not. That definitely is out of our purview.
So I guess I'd just like to comment, I mean, I understand the neighbor's concern and the pride of ownership, and Commissioner Cross brought up architectural style. I think that should need to be addressed in preliminary plat. However, I do think we need to reiterate that unfortunately, on behalf of the neighbors, I mean, it is currently listed in our zoning, it's public, that's what it is zoned, it does allow it in the zoning. It's the legal right of, they're falling within the rights of the development, so that does clearly stand. I think the water issue, the drainage, would be beneficial to be addressed, and that would help the ownership on that side of the property, which winds up helping you if it does get developed, because otherwise it's just more of the same. So I guess that's just my comment to point out where we stand.
One last thing on here, if you look at this development, the way the road comes in off of Crest and goes straight west, it looks like you've got room there for additional guest parking maybe, right at the end of that, or snow storage back there also.
Yeah. Right at the
Straight in.
Straight in, like. at the-
Straight into the, as you're going to the west.
Right there.
Yep.
Right here, yeah.
Could you, has there been a thought of a couple stalls there, like guest parking, or?
Guest Parking.
Sometimes you see in townhome developments, you'll see everyone gets it, and then there's like three
It's
off to
going to
the
be a
side.
public street, though, so they can't start designating it off
Got it.
privately.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, it's going to operate like any
Right.
public street.
And my understanding, I think from Mr. Ringwald, was that, the plow comes in, circles the cul-de-sac, and unfortunately, most of the snow ends up here, in this guy's front yard, so.
That one's for $5,000 less.
Possibly, right? So, yeah, I don't think the city would plow snow up onto there from a storage perspective.
Okay.
Regarding snow removal on Crest Drive, the Presbyterian Church lot has always been problematic for deep snow drifts in the winter. We probably had a 4-foot snow drift the entire length of Crest Drive last year. We had a lot of snow, but it's that way all the time. It's always blowing in there. So, if we start making piles on the corners, it's even going to get more problematic too. So, another challenge.
Well, the drifts are caused because it's open space.
Open
though, right?
land, actually,
So
I think,
now
I think structures would actually help eliminate that.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
All right, well, I think it's important to keep in mind that we're at the concept stage here.
Yep.
We've brought up some concerns. I think that staff should review if we do need a traffic study here. I think we're gonna, it sounds like we want to probably put that in the motion as an additional.
Condition?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what level of traffic study you need to be done. I don't know if there's different levels,
Yeah,
but,
that's-
I mean, it is only 8 units. I mean, it is a couple acre site. It's not fairly dense. I mean, it's, whether it was 4 units or 8, if 4 is okay and 8's maybe not, I mean, we're only talking about a few extra cars potentially. But, yeah, I agree. We can, some level of traffic study,
Yeah, appropriate.
whatever would be appropriate for this type of development.
All right, do we have any other comments, or can we move forward?
I think everything else is covered in the conditions listed, so.
All right, that being said, can we, someone want to entertain a motion?
I'll make the motion to recommend City Council approval of Shepherd of the Hills Twin City Concept Plan, subject to the conditions, plus the addition of the traffic study. Is there anything else?
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Cross. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, everyone, for your input, and there's a lot, I think that there has to be worked on with the drainage and everything before we'll need some more, some definite plans before, or when preliminary comes out.
A lot of issues addressed after the preliminary plat.
So, okay. Moving on to other business, I think we just need to receive in the minutes from the other meetings, city meetings this month. So that is, that's just done. And so lastly, I guess we'll do a quick around the horn. Commissioner Seiler, you want to start? Or if you have anything?
I don't have anything.
That's perfect, too.
Either do I.
Good, thank you.
All right.
Just a comment that the Duncan site is the longest construction project I've ever seen. So.
Is there a problem there, or is that just?
No, I just think it's their pace.
Did I hear a rumor that a wall fell or something happened in construction that they had to
I
rebuild?
think
That was
trusses
way
fell
early
over,
on.
Yeah,
that
okay.
was in the
Ceiling
paper
beams.
On a windy.
Or trusses. So,
down.
midway through, so.
But that's not slowing them down that much.
No. But one other question is about the hot crossing. When will that be repaired?
I still don't know the exact date because it's a really specialized part that we're trying to get.
Oh,
And so, I know they're trying to get it as fast as possible for us, but, it is not a standard part.
okay.
Or off-the-shelf part that we're getting.
What are we talking about?
Is this by the,
The pedestrian crossing
by
by
the
the.
curling club?
Going,
Oh, yeah.
going to the curling
That's not
rink.
working right
And
now.
so, especially now that it's summer, school's out, people are
Yeah.
crossing, we're trying to expedite it as much as possible, but
That's just a worn out part, or did it?
it was a
Boy, I
manufacturer
hope it isn't
default.
that, 'cause it hasn't been there very long.
No.
Do we want to
And so-
order two?
That's all I have.
Okay. Commissioner Lacy?
Nothing.
Olson?
Nothing?
Commissioner
I
Brass?
don't have anything.
All I have is, and I mean, unfortunately, we meet on Wednesday night, but the concert in the park, I don't know if that's what we call it, but the one that's over by Curling Club started tonight, and,
Looked fairly busy when I got here.
yeah, it's a friend of mine's band was playing tonight, so, it's a good start, and I think that's a really, really cool thing, so.
Those are really nice, the concerts
Yeah.
that we have, yeah.
So, summer in Chaska is always a lot of fun, so. So I appreciate all of the hard work that the staff does to bring those things on board. That's all I have. Kevin?
I have two things. One, next Monday night, June 17th, 4:30 to 7, we have the open meeting law workshop
Right.
with the League of Minnesota Cities at the fire station. So two things. One, you get to learn more about
Fire
open meeting
station.
laws. And if you haven't been to the fire station, if you had a chance to visit the Chaska Fire Station.
They're gonna let us use the sliding pole.
If you ask nice, they might.
You can ring the bell.
And the second one is, if you're interested, or any Chaska resident is interested, through this week, if you go to the first floor here at City Hall, you can get 2 tickets for the KPMG Women's PGA Championship. And we highly recommend it. They're free to Chaska residents, so just go downstairs and you can pick up 2 tickets, and each ticket will allow you to bring in, I think, 4 kids under 17. And that's for Tuesday and Wednesday, you can get
practice
one or
round
the other
tickets?
date. And so, if you haven't done so, or anybody in our vast viewing audience hasn't received it yet, please stop downstairs, and actually, you missed it, I think Monday, we actually had the trophy here.
Saw that.
And so you could have got your picture taken with the actual trophy. And so, but we're still handing out tickets, and so, through the end of this week, so if you can, if you have a chance, stop in between 8 and 4:30 and pick up some free tickets.
Even if you're not a golf fan, you gotta go out and walk those grounds out there. It's
Super nice out there.
It's like heaven on earth, yes. I think.
Since we're pushing free stuff, on Saturday at Lake Minnewaska Fishing Pier, Chaska area, Fishing with Friends is having a free public fishing event. No license required. We'll have loaner equipment, free bait, and 10 to 2, and just come and stop by and see us and bring your kids. And
Great.
it's one of 6 we're holding this summer around Carver County.
Wonderful. That's all I had.
I don't have anything.
You talked enough tonight?
I did, and Kevin stole mine, so.
Well, Starbucks and Chipotle's open since we last met, I think, right? Those are
Aldi's
both
as
open.
well.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
That was
Aldi.
already open, but
Yeah.
I think it's nice. I've been through both of them.
Yeah,
Worked out pretty good.
yeah, it looks nice up there.
Hopefully, and we will not have a July meeting?
Yep, no July meeting right now.
No July
Oh.
meeting.
Yep, you can believe
Very
it.
nice, very nice to hear.
Summer break.
Nice little holiday break for
That
you.
would be
Is
the,
it,
so that would have been, what, the 10th?
so is it because of the holiday or why?
No,
Yeah, it
just
is the 10th.
applications.
It's just
We've
that
we've been
happens a lot.
heavy, and we're kind of in between.
It
People
happens in
like
the
just
summer.
can't spin it around fast enough to get back in and
Yeah.
that queue, so we'll be back to normal in August. It's
Yeah.
just kind of how things have been happening.
Right.
And one other thing I just thought of real quick, by Chaska Commons on 41 and Pioneer, on the Commons corner, it's been dug up there for quite a while with like big pieces of plywood. Are they covering the hole? Are we waiting to do something
the new
there?
signage?
Yeah, are they doing more? Because right now it just says Chaska Commons, it's a
Right.
smaller, where the big brick.
They should be done with the signage out there.
Well,
so I'm
then-
not
Signage is
sure.
done, but the remnants left behind are
Yeah,
still
they
there, that's what
then-
you're saying.
We'll have to find out.
Well,
Yeah.
if they are done, they didn't finish the grass and so that's why, to me, it doesn't look like it's done yet. But it also looks like nothing is happening for quite a while now.
It's a good comment, yeah. It does look like it's,
And now that Pioneer's fixed and the road got striped the other day, things are starting to look more normal, so.
The July meeting is Wednesday, July 10th, that
Right.
we're anticipating canceling, so.
okay.
Well, then we'll come to the open meeting law meeting. Gonna give us- yeah.
We'll swap.
Okay, well, that's great. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Seiler,
I'll second.
second Brass, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you for your time, everyone, I appreciate it.